I think we've come to a stage in the promotion race in League Two where it's looking increasingly likely that 3 of the top 7 will win automatic promotion. 3 of the current top 7, I mean to say, because I think if you had asked me last time we did the automatic promotion race, we were talking about basically the top 11 teams down to around MK Dons, and how it was so even and how you could sort of throw a blanket over those sides. So I think it's looking a little bit less like that now. I think that we're seeing a real pattern whereby, although the teams between 8th and 11th still have a chance at reaching the playoffs, I think realistically for the top 3, it's going to be one of the current top 7. And going to be very interesting to see whether one of that current top 7 drops out, because they are all looking pretty consistent at the moment. So really intriguing to talk about who's going to get into the top 3 and who's going to be playing League One football next season. That's what we're going to discuss on this League 2 podcast. Yes, welcome along to EFL Debate. You could do us a massive favour by getting subscribed to us on YouTube and on Spotify, because that would help us out a lot. In a minute, I'm going to bring in my first guest of the evening, which is Simon Ward from Walsall Fan TV. But for now, I'm joined by my co-host, Ed Walker, an expert on all things fourth tier.
Sorry, I think I've poked myself in the eye. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Sorry, I'm all right. I'm there. Okay, we're all good.
And we're also joined by Chris Windsor of Dizzy Up the Guy on Twitter, a Bradford City fan. Good evening, gents. To you, Ed, first of all, do you agree with me? Do you think it's going to be 3 from 7 in terms of the automatic promotion race?
Well, there's definitely only 3 teams that can go up automatically, Gab, as you said at the start, so that's good to go with. A bit of insight to the very beginning. I enjoyed that opening line. Yeah, I think we've kind of seen what we...
Cutting edge insight here on AFL Debate, Ed. That's what it is.
Of course. I think we talked a while back about Salton, the purple patch, having think it was going to drop off. I think we're seeing that now. They have kind of thought away. They need to get the consistency back up to get into that top area. Grimsby, I think, are another one who could maybe still push top 7, because I do like them when they're at the top level. Everyone below, well, MK Dons, we'll see what happens with MK Dons, but they've still got a big gap to make up. And Chesterfield, I think, are just a bit too hit and miss with their injury list. So, yeah, I would echo that thought. I feel like we might have the 7 that are going to be the 7 as it goes. Although there is still a chunk of the season left, and you never know. League 2 likes getting someone in there late on, don't they? So we'll see what happens with that.
Chris, you're someone who's got skin in the game as a Bradford City fan. We'll come on to the Bantams in more detail later in the show, but what have you made of the current sort of challenges outside Valley Parade for automatic promotion? Anyone in particular caught your eye?
I think that you've probably hit the nail on the head. I think when you look at all the top 7 currently, I do think that you're absolutely right, that I don't think there will be anybody else who rides that. I've been a fan of Wimbledon for quite a while, as you well know. I think I've mentioned to you in the past that they do seem to kind of grind out those results. I feel that there is the word that we last time when I came on that we talked about was consistency, and that where there wasn't any consistency, I think we're starting to see, certainly in the run at current, certainly I would say in January, where we are starting to see that little bit more consistency from the top teams, and I do feel that they're trying to push away. Obviously, Walsall are having a few little issues at the moment, but I still feel that they're just too far to catch, and I think we're still talking about them as first in this league.
A question on that, actually. How big does the sample have to be for Walsall before we start saying they could actually get dragged back into the promotion mix? Because they're on 3 games winless at the minute, which I don't think is a lot. If it got to, say, 5 or 6, would that be the point where you think, okay, something's not quite right here?
I think you have to do, don't you, Ed? I think, if they have got that kind of a run that's 5 or 6 games, you've got to start. There's got to be concerns. And I'm sure that Walsall fans will start to feel very, very nervous. I'm sure the nerves is probably just starting to tip in just ever so slightly at the moment. But I think that if you're looking at a 5-6 game run, you've got to start being slightly worried about whether you can get over that finishing line and not have one of the biggest collapses that we've seen in this league. So it's going to be interesting to see how they come back. I mean, obviously they were 2-0 down on Saturday. They did get the point. I just still feel that they are too strong. I've watched them 2 or 3 times this season, and I've been absolutely blown away with them. Bar obviously when Bradford played them a couple of weeks ago, but I have been really, really impressed against. I remember the MK Dons game, for instance. I thought they were fantastic. I thought they were absolutely brilliant to watch.
Well, great place to bring in Simon from Walsall Fan TV. Simon, I'm a little bit more I'm not quite changing my stance on Walsall on the basis of 3 games. I've seen teams that have won the league in the past, like Stockport County and like Leyton Orient, even when they've been comfortable champions, teams that have had a bit of a sticky patch. I think for 3 games, I think that's a very small sample size. But is there any sort of been the nerves in the fan base on the basis of, Nathan Lowe has gone back to Stoke and, maybe the impact that might have had on your form?
Not so much Nathan Lowe. I think if we put things into context, Walsall had won 9 games on the bounce, and that was always going to drop at some point. The away game at Bradford did present perhaps one of the most difficult games that we'd got remaining. And that day, Bradford were absolutely on fire and thoroughly deserved the win. But the key issue was Jamil Matt going off injured. Jamil Matt went off. We brought Danny Johnson on, which Danny Johnson is a great goal scorer, but he's never going to lead the line. So that game sort of fell away from us. Couple of defensive lapses, which were rare, but I think there's a bit of tiredness in the camp, I think, and the momentum had sort of carried us to a certain point. And then coming up against a very informed, energetic Bradford team was the one that sort of broke the run. The following game, away to Fleetwood a bit of a bogey team for us, as you know, because they beat us 6-2 at our place. And then again, without Jamil Matt, we've never looked as good when Jamil Matt's not started. And the hold-up play up front was sort of missing. When Nathan Lowe was there, he did some of that job, but that's a big miss having Jamil Matt out, and then obviously without Nathan Lowe being there either, you've got nobody up front who can really hold the ball up. We had put Ethan Wheatley in, which is the new signing from Manchester United. It's his first loan spell, and the first couple of games, it's clear he's a very talented guy, but it's very early days for him.
What kind of striker is he, Simon? Is he a big guy? Is he quite a mobile guy?
He's tall. He's tall, reasonably quick, and got good feet, and he's got an excellent finishing record. But had just gone 19 against airy arse adults sort of thing. He got pushed about a bit, and that's something he'll need to adjust to. Against Salford, he had a torrid time. He didn't really sort of get hold of it. Whenever he tried to compete, he'd give away a foul, and the rest of the time he was getting knocked off the ball. So it was a little bit unfair with him in some ways. When he tried to compete, they were sort of giving fouls and that sort of stuff. He got subbed off, and he looked quite dejected. But as I said on my channel, after being pampered for probably 10 plus years at Manchester United and then getting thrown into the adult game in League Two, it is a bit of a rude awakening for him. And I think he'll come through it, or I'm hoping he'll come through it and he'll be fine. But it was a bit of a shock to the system for him. So Walsall's mini blip, as it were, well, we're hoping it's a mini blip. The fact, I think, in some ways, I think the slump ended with quarter of an hour to go against Salford. We had battered Salford for the whole of the second half, and the ball just wouldn't go in. And then when eventually it did go in, another one came quickly after. And if the ref had played the correct amount of stoppage time, I think we'd have probably ended up winning it. But I think Walsall had adjusted and looked strong in that game. And the second goal for Salford, which sort of looked like it had killed us off, there was a clear handball by Lund on the halfway line to set him away, which the ref and the linesman sort of missed, which, as we all know, League Two reffing is sort of one of them. Sometimes I do feel with the refs that they're being harsh on Walsall, trying to balance out the league, perhaps. I don't know. But I mean, I'm sure everybody's got that same story of issues.
Yeah.
I was going to say the getting Jamil Matt back fit is key, and I do believe he's okay and he's available for Saturday, which would be a big boost for us. But in the January transfer window, and the last minute of it, pretty much, Ellis Harrison coming in from MK Dons. A lot of MK Dons fans are sort of like, why the hell have we let him go? Some were thinking he should have been started instead of Scott Hogan. But he is very much in the Jamil Matt style. And at 31, looks like a replacement or a natural progressive replacement for Jamil Matt, sort of to go into next season. So it looks like we've filled the gaps there. We've got extra couple of heads in midfield, just to sort of cover things there. And I think we set up now to, as long as we sort of get over this mini blip, I think we're good to go for the rest of the season.
Well, let's hope that's the case. One thing I'm wondering about, Simon, is defensively, even though you've been a fantastic side and one of the best teams I've seen in League Two in the last sort of studying the league for the last 10 years or so, I still have this feeling, part of me thinks you can get at Walsall because, you've got a fairly youthful defence with David Akagbu and Harry Williams, but also I feel like Taylor Allen, if I'm a quick, strong forward, I wouldn't necessarily be super afraid of facing Taylor Allen. I'd feel like I'd probably be able to get past him. And I'm wondering, seeing as the way Liam Gordon plays at left wing back in terms of he does cut inside a lot and try and link up, I do wonder whether that leaves a bit of a chasm down that left-hand side, which seems to be working. The trade-off seems to be working for you in League Two because that link-up play between Taylor Allen and Liam Gordon, and you seem to be able to occupy teams and maybe stop them from getting out. But I'm wondering, if you were to get into League One, actually could that left side be a bit of a vulnerability, perhaps?
Interesting point. Evan Weir did very well against Notts when he played against Notts. I think the goal line clearance did the rounds, which was good. But he hasn't started since. He hasn't started since, but he came on Saturday, and we think Taylor Allen's got a really good left foot. His left foot is even better, and he's much more physical than Taylor Allen at the back. So perhaps sometimes knocking Taylor Allen up to left side of midfield and putting Evan Weir in there is a progression that's possible.
Yeah, I mean, Ed, what do you think about this kind of experience question mark for Walsall in defence? Because I think I'm right in saying Evan Weir's a young lad as well. So
yes.
I'm thinking if we're thinking this is the back three for Walsall to move forward with, possibly into League One, or they have got a job to finish in terms of this season, they might be extremely talented individual defenders, but whether the kind of the cohesion is right in terms of the balance of a bit of know-how, a bit of experience, I'm just wondering, whether theoretically this is a League One team sort of pitching.
I would say the League One discussion is for a few months from now.
Okay.
Get that job done first primarily. I like all three individuals. I think we had this discussion with Walsall earlier in the season. In our heads, we kind of thought Priest, Carson and Donovan Daniels would start part of that starting back line instead. And what's happened is Williams and Okaburi in particular have handed that chance and really made the most of it. And Taylor Ann's looked really impressive, I think, as a left side centre half on a number of occasions. I don't think the age concerns me that much. I think
Really?
if they're showing in a starring team like this, where it has not just been about the forward options to this Walsall side, there was so much impressed with, particularly the work of the midfield and the defence and the consistency of it. I would say if they're starring at the top in this league now, I would like to hope that the ones you look at and think, if you're already at the top level of this league already, you're going to get even better. There's a chance of you looking quite good in the division above next season, should that come.
I think you're right. The experience, particularly with the running, when the pressure's on, you need some more experience in there. Donovan Daniels is out injured at the moment, but I don't think he's far away. I think he's probably only about 3 or 4 weeks away. Priestley Farquharson, of course, it would be great to have him back, but I just can't see him getting fit, to be honest. They're saying March, and but I mean, he keeps having breakdowns when we think he's getting near fit. So there is the experience there, but of course they're in around them in the training camp and that sort of stuff, and there's some good experience around them to sort of coach them through the pressure when it's when the running sort of gets into full fire.
I think it's that question, Gab, of like the thing you always have with experienced signings: are you getting any long term, as in more than 1 year value out of them? So you're getting someone in now who sees them over the line now, but you look at him and say your League One expiry date's already hit, and there's not much point, I think, bringing in someone now for the final couple of months of the season, really.
No. And the thing is, if you bought somebody in new, if they'd bought somebody in for centre half during the transfer window, they wouldn't have got a game anyway.
No.
Do you know what I mean? They've got a set team. Evan Weir's chomping at the bit to get there.
Because Osher McKenty's gone into midfield, hasn't he, Simon? Because he was
he had had some games in midfield. He's one that divides the fan base, really. A lot don't like him in midfield and would prefer him to stay in the back three. He's sort of cover for David Cagboo, I think, at the moment. But he could easily slot into the back three. The midfield is better with Jamie Jellis and Charlie Lakin, much more balanced.
Yeah. By the way, Simon, I love Ryan Stirk this season. Just the ground that he covers, like being able to cover those defensive bases, but also being able to go and press. Sometimes he's just got so much energy, and he's one. And I think of the three, they work so well. Whether that was with Oshie McKenty, but also with Jamie Jellis and Charlie Lakin, they just complement each other beautifully because they don't stop running, do they?
Well, that's right. Question for you, Gab. Alfie Chang, what do you know about him? He's joined us. I think he's similar to Lakin and Jellis, I think.
I believe, obviously, even though I'm a Birmingham City fan, he's not played loads for us, but I believe he's quite an all-action midfielder. So in a three-man midfield, I reckon he'd probably play as one of the 2/8s. So you've certainly got lots of competition there, haven't you? Because you've got Jack Earing, who we've not even mentioned.
Well, Jack Earing's injured.
Oh, he's injured, sorry.
George Hall's similarly injured as well, isn't he?
Yeah,
people joke that Walsall's midfield's made up of Blues players, and to be fair, they got a point, mate. Apart from Jamie Jellis, really, it's a lot of very Blues heavy that was Walsall.
Right, former Blues, yeah,
former Blues, yeah. All right.
Simon, can I ask you quickly? I think one thing that was very interesting for me was when we played you. I was very fearful of your pace going forwards, but actually I found, because I felt that we're quite slow at the back. I don't know if you agree with this. I found that you were quite slow at the back and really, really struggled with our pace. Was that just an off day, or is that a constant problem for Walsall?
Generally, Liam Gordon and Harry Williams are both very, very quick. But for the third goal, Liam Gordon got turned, I think, and so he was sort of off his feet, really, almost. And struggled to get back. And I think that's what's got us. We've not really struggled for pace at the back, but really we've not had teams break on us with that ferocity in hardly any of the games. We've been sort of pressing on teams, and then when they've been on top, we've been fairly compact at the edge of the box and not conceded many shots. Being caught out at that point is quite rare for us. So that's why I think Bradford did that very well. They sort of did a Walsall on us, really.
Yeah, I do really want to bring in Daniel Pearson in a moment, but I can't let you go, Sam, without asking you about Conor Barrett, because I've absolutely loved watching him this season, because he's got this sort of the kind of hybrid of running styles, right? He's on the one hand, he can kind of glide with the ball in a really delightful way, like the ball's sort of glued to his foot, but then he can also bring that explosivity to his game in the final third, where he just knocks the ball ahead and then really powers onto it. And I think when you've got that kind of threat from your wing back, you become a much more rounded team and much harder to stop. So, yeah, I mean, he must have been a delight to watch at the best got this season, right?
That's it. I think he's been marked more heavily in the last couple of months,
Right.
Which sort of giving some room for other players, of course. He combines well with Jamie Jellis as well. That's why I think where Oshie has played in the number 8, he hasn't combined with Barrett anywhere near as well as Jamie Jellis. So I think we tied those up again against Salford, and that looked much better. Looked much more balanced team. Conor Barrett, yeah, he's for the first season in the EFL, he's had a very good season. But I mean, at times maybe he's tiring a little bit. And again, I think the Bradford game, I think it was there's a few tired legs at the worst possible time, really. Sort of, and similarly against Fleetwood, we had a few players drop below the level that they've been maintaining. So it's just if we can get back to that on Saturday, because the run of games we've got in February do look winnable. So we've got Gillingham to play at home, Morecambe away. So we've got some games there that we should be okay with, I think.
Well, you've certainly earned yourself a bit of leeway with your incredible form so far this season. So Walsall have been amazing to watch this season. I think everyone connected with the football club should be incredibly proud. Just before I let you go, Sadler's going to go up as champions?
Right at this minute, I think, yes, I think we'll finish in the top 3. Whether we're champions or not, I don't know. Because Donny and Notts County are very, very strong.
Come on, Simon. We wouldn't have said that a week ago or even 2 weeks ago, would we? You've been very confident.
Well, no, I'm always a little bit defensive. The join the pain mantra, I think we've had a bit of pain the last couple of weeks, and it sort of give everybody a checkpoint. If we'd still got Nathan Lowe, I'd say champions without doubt. But I was, before Nathan Lowe went, I was still nervous that we hadn't got real cover for Jamil Matt. But now we've got cover for Jamil Matt. That sort of helps. But yeah, ask me after Saturday. If we win on Saturday, then I might change my mind.
All right, I'll hold you to that, Simon.
I think one thing that will help Walsall is a lot of the teams in the playoff zone from 2nd to 7th, they've all got to play each other. So they're all going to be dropping points. And Chesterfield, Doncaster, that's tomorrow night, isn't it? Again, that's another tough one to sort of see how they respond to that. But if Doncaster keep winning, like a 20-game run like they did last season, then I'm sure they will catch us. But I think for us, the eye's on 4th. If 11 points clear of 4th, as long as we maintain that, then happy days. It would be nice to win the title, of course.
Absolutely, Simon. Fingers crossed, and keep up the great work on Walsall Fan TV. And I'd urge everyone to go and subscribe to it. So, best luck to Sadlers, and look forward to seeing it.
Cheers. Can I do a very quick plug?
Sure.
I've written a book. It's about gambling. It's explores the avenues of gambling, the good and the bad side of gambling. So if you just check on me Twitter, you'll see a link for it, and go and have a look.
Lovely. Thank you, Simon. Really appreciate your time.
Champion. Cheers, guys. Good to see you as always.
Cheers. So delighted to be joined by my next guest, which is Daniel Pearson of 18 Dapper, Doncaster Rovers fan. Good evening, Daniel. Thanks so much for joining us. You feeling confident about Doncaster's top 3 prospects?
More confident than what I was a few weeks ago. I think we're starting to hit a little bit of consistency, which I've been grumbling about all season. We've been very hit and miss, but fortunately for us, I think the full division has been a little hit and miss up until more recently. I think somebody mentioned that the consistency in the top 7 is starting to show. I think it's only 5 defeats in 35 games combined recently, so it just shows that top 7 is starting to kind of hit the form at the right time. So yeah, we're in a good position. A little bit nervy about Wimbledon and Notts County. Obviously, they've got games in hand over us. If they win those, then the leapfroggers. I think Chris mentioned his kind of appreciation of Wimbledon. I think defensively they're so solid. The grind, like you said, the grinding out results. And if you've got that good foundation of a solid defence, they've only conceded 20 goals this season. You're going to succeed or get some success from that, as long as you can put the ball in the back of the net at the other end. But yeah, Notts County are looking really strong as well. So I think slightly more confident, but still very wary of the teams in and around it. That one slip up in this division and it goes south pretty quickly, doesn't it?
Certainly does. One thing that stood out to me, Daniel, from the highlights of Saturday's victory was the performances of Jamie Sterry and Owen Bailey, because Sterry made one really strong run into a goal-scoring area from right back, which is what I love to see from Jamie Sterry, because I know he can do it consistently, as he's shown before with yourselves and with Hartlepool. And Owen Bailey played a lovely through ball, I think, for one of the chances, I think, as well, into the penalty area. And I'm just wondering, those 2 players were probably 2 of your best players last season. I know Sterry missed the first half of last season injured, didn't he? And maybe this year, some people had said that maybe they'd taken a while to really hit those top levels. Are we starting to see signs of Owen Bailey and Jamie Sterry find that extra gear that we know they're capable of?
Yeah, I think we are, and I think we're starting to see it throughout the squad. I think Maxwell as well on the left-hand side, he's starting to get back to what we know that he can be, and there's a little bit of consistency in the squad selection as well. So all season, I think McCann's probably had a little bit too much choice, which it can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing. And I think it has been detrimental in some games where he's kind of tinkered a little bit when a lot of fans felt that he didn't need to, but he's the manager. He sees them week in, week out in training, doesn't he? And if somebody's carrying a knock, what we don't know, that could be why. Or if somebody's not quite hit the form that he's wanting during the week, then is well within his rights to drop him. But yeah, I think you're right with Sterry. Really good going forward. There's question marks defensively, but I think he's got to be in that team just for a little bit like Trent Alexander-Arnold at Liverpool. His delivery is fantastic. I'm not saying he's as good as Trent.
I would.
He's a League Two, Trent. We'll go with that. But I think just kind of going forward, it does give you that option and that chance of creating something in and around the box, and his link up with Molyneux as well. I can't think of the words to kind of describe Molyneux this season. 12 goals, 5 assists. He's
in some form, isn't he?
Yeah,
he's in some form.
He's scoring crosses. That's when you know he's in form. We all saw the Barrow goal. Actually, the second one, I should say.
Yeah. So yeah, when you're scoring crosses, it's all going your way, isn't it? But yeah, I think a word for the 2 centre backs as well. Olawu's up for Player of the Month, and I think his partnership with Jay McGrath as well, who's a young. I mean, we were talking about the Walsall defence being fairly young. Jay's 21. So hopefully tying down to a big contract or a long contract, and he develops and progresses with us, hopefully up the divisions. But
yeah,
there's a lot of work to do.
One thing that's really interests me, Daniel, about both Jay McGrath and Joseph Olawu is that I would associate both with being very physical defenders and very aggressive defenders, where they back themselves because of their athleticism and power to really go for duels and sort of win them, just because it's like you're not getting past us. And I'm almost surprised that they've worked so well, as odd as it sounds, because instinctively you would think that you need a Ferdinand alongside a Vizic, as it were. You need somebody who can sweep alongside maybe the more aggressive centre half. And maybe my perception of Oliver is a little bit outdated. Maybe he's added a maturity to his game as opposed to maybe what we saw during the sort of McSheffrey era. But they seem to have, they're one of the best defensive pairings in the division, that's for sure.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there with Oliver. I think he has matured a lot, and although if he needs to get involved and win that duel, he goes in full throttle. But he does tend to kind of let Jay do that side of the game. I said to my family, I don't know if you've seen the challenge from Jay, where he kind of
yes, I did see that one. It was brilliant. Yeah. The opposition player just looked really sort of slightly stunned by it. Almost like they had a cartoon, going around their head. Like
But we said that Jay, with any 50-50 challenge, he kind of makes it a 70-30 in his favour, just because he's that committed to it and that confident that he's going to come out with the ball. And the MK player really didn't want any involvement in that and came off slightly the worst, didn't he? But great centre-back pairing, and that's a little bit like Wimbledon, that foundation and kind of that base of a good defence. You can build on that, and I think we are.
Chris, you were sort of salivating a little bit at the mention of Luke Molyneux. He obviously made a real impression at Valley Parade. So can you just sort of expand a little bit on how he's sort of impressed you from an outside perspective?
I think when you look back at, when he even we go back to when he was at Hartlepool, I think that it was a real coup when Doncaster did sign him. I expected that he would be in League One. I feel, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure that he had a pretty injury-stricken first year. Really struggled, and you kind of wondered about what was going to happen with Molyneux and what he would end up, how he would progress, I guess, and whether he'd disappear. I think the guy is just, he's genius.
He's back to his Hartlepool levels.
He is. He totally is. Absolutely is. If not higher. And I think that, Doncaster fans, they're obviously salivating over him. To be honest, I think everybody else is, when you watch him, he's just so in form. He's just a glorious footballer to watch. And he's certainly a player I wish was at Bradford. Maybe next season, we'll see. But I think with Molyneux, in all seriousness, I think that he's really pushing Doncaster up the table, and deservedly so. Being the best team roughly over the last year, I think, really, if we look at like the stats.
Yeah, we've had a good year since that 1-1 draw away at Sutton. I think that was kind of the turning point, a very late, I think it was 92nd minute penalty.
Right.
And I look back at that, and at the time I was thinking we'd be National League this year. So to see that winning run that I don't think we will replicate, I hope we do, but I don't think we will. But to see that, and then kind of a hit and miss season, but we've only lost 7, drawn 7 out of his 29 games. I think I'm probably being a bit harsh grumbling at that sort of form. There's other teams that would snap your hand off for that kind of form, so I think we've got to enjoy it while it's here.
Certainly have. What was I going to say? I think one thing that's really admired, like you say, losing so few games, I think there's always been an identity to Doncaster Rovers, which is aggressive, high octane, front foot team that always likes to try and force the opposition back because of the athleticism in this side. I get it, but at the same time, maybe in possession this season, you've maybe been a little bit inconsistent, or maybe not quite at the level that maybe Grant McCann would have ideally wanted. Are you seeing signs that maybe with the addition of Charlie Crewe on loan from Leeds, that you could find that extra gear that we've all been looking for Doncaster Rovers this season?
Yeah, it pains me to say it, but because he's a Leeds player, but he is absolutely fantastic. We're having a conversation on Saturday about Matty Craig, because I do think we potentially missed out on him in January. It sounded like we were in for him as well as Mansfield, and he kind of pushed us on last season from January, and everybody were hoping that we'd get him back this year to hopefully do the same. I think we've got better than Matty Craig. I really do. Charlie Crewe, he covers so much ground. His box to box, he'll pop up in little pockets. His passing ability is unreal. Is certainly one to watch for the future, and I think he'll be playing at a very high level. And to make an international debut at 17, you know, Mug doing that, and is showing the quality that he's got at this level, and for his age, he's not frightened about getting stuck in as well. It is a joy to watch. So yeah, I think he could be the player that kind of makes the difference between us potentially in playoffs or in the top three. So
do you think his arrival has kind of stopped Owen Bailey being maybe the key midfield man? Because that was kind of the opinion I had, that really since Matthew Craig, and even to a point where Matthew Craig was still there, Owen Bailey's just all action approach really made him a valuable asset. And I wonder now, have you felt this season he's maybe not been quite at that same level of importance in the team?
Yeah, I don't know if maybe getting the captaincy has had a bit of an impact on Owen a little bit. I don't think he's kind of hit the levels that he did last year. It could be tiredness. I think he's played about 50 odd games last year, and then he's not missed a game this year. We've said a number of times it looks like he's ready for just a spell out of the team, maybe just a game, just to give him a breather. But then he'll pop up with a decent through ball, or he'll just be really involved in the game, and you just think we can't not have him in there. But kind of to share that load with Charlie Crewe and Patrick Kelly as well, I thought he was phenomenal on Saturday. Just loads of energy between him and Charlie, and then kind of Owen's just there to support them through it. I think that's a really good middle three.
Certainly is. So do you reckon Doncaster are going to get the top three then, Daniel?
You've got to back your team, haven't you? You've got to. Tomorrow night's massive. Like Simon said, Chesterfield away, they beat us 3-0 at our place, so we have got a score to settle on that one. I think they got beat late on last Saturday. I think it was quite a late goal at Cheltenham, maybe. Can't remember if it was Cheltenham or.
Yes, it was Cheltenham.
Yes,
it was, wasn't it? Yeah. So yeah, they'll want to kind of bounce back from that, and they're not out of the playoff picture, are they? So
no.
They need to get the points to kind of keep the pressure on the teams above them. So
is there any eye on Palace on Monday? Because the last League Two team in the cup, are you looking at that as kind of an occasion with the Premier League side coming? Because there's a little bit of me that thinks they put that's an upset territory, especially with the fact of it being at the Eco Power. I just wonder, the way you're talking sounds like Thursday and then the league fixture the weekend afterwards, kind of more on my mind than it. We just kind of enjoy Monday and whatever happens, that happens.
Yeah, for me, and I don't think I'm kind of alone in this thinking, Monday's a free hit. I'm frustrated that it's on Monday. I think we've been done over massively with that. I think it should have been
for you nowadays, sadly.
Yeah, it should have been one of the Saturday or Sunday televised games. And I'm not saying that just because I'm a Donny fan. I think if it was any League Two team, lowest ranked team against a Premier League team, it's not a glamorous tie. It's Crystal Palace, but it's a Premier League team, and I think to move it to a Monday night is a bit of an insult to the lower leagues, to be honest. It'll impact us gate. There's no trains running because there's a train strike, so the Palace fans have got no way of getting home. And they've only put it on iPlayer, so we've lost £85,000 roughly just from it being on streaming rather than on main TV. And I think to get rid of the replays, if that's right or wrong, that's a complete another discussion. But it just seems like wherever possible, they're going to take money away from lower league clubs, and it frustrates me. But the game itself, I think, it's a free hit. I think we've just got to try and enjoy it, show what we're capable of, give a good account of ourselves like we did at Everton earlier on in the season. If we bloody some noses and cause an upset, fantastic, and then see who we get in the fifth round. But I think the bread and butter is the league, and we need to be in League One and continue progressing like we have done over the last year or so. So for me, league is a focus. FA Cup's just a bit of a fun day out, hopefully.
Bit of a treat, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we wish you well, Daniel, and look forward to catching up soon. And everyone go get subscribed to 18 Dapper on YouTube.
Quality stuff. Thank you for having me.
Top man. Cheers, Dan. Appreciate that. We will be joined by Port Vale fan Lauren in a moment, but for now we're joined by KCi Rennicks, Port Vale fan, not Notts County fan even, getting my black and white promotion chasers mixed up. Notts County fan KCi Rennicks, how are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Obviously, apologies if you can hear any background noise. I am on my break, but no, I'm good, mate. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Yeah, really well. Thanks so much for taking the time out of your work to join us. Hope we don't get you in trouble. Listen, I wanted to talk to you about Notts County because the impact of Charlie Whittaker, who signed from Everton in January, because there was a suggestion that you might miss Dan Crowley and the sort of the vision and the sort of creativity that he provides. But actually, I'm really liking the way Whittaker drops into sort of the deeper midfield areas and really opens games up with his agility and skill.
Well, yeah, look, I mean, again, losing Crowley, any team's going to suffer from that. But I think Whittaker, it's took him a little bit of time to obviously bed into the team. Of course, it's his first, move in men's football. Obviously, academy football can only take you so far. I think League Two is a whole different ballgame to the Premier League, Premier League Two. But I think, especially on Saturday with Whittaker, we obviously had Gillingham away. First 10 minutes, it looks a bit shaky, but the game that followed was absolutely superb. I thought he was brilliant. I agree with you. He drops into that pocket really well, and I think it allows McGoldrick a lot of space as well. I mean, we all saw the chip. We don't need to go through that. But yeah, but Whittaker, yeah, he looks like he's really starting to grow into it. And I know Stuart Maynard was full of praise of him after the game as well. He deserved it because he did have a very good game.
Certainly did. I feel like Notts County is starting to look like a really balanced team, and quite clearly for me, the second best team in the league behind Walsall, and even above Walsall, you could say if we're going strictly on recent form. Although I like to take maybe a longer view, but I think that on the one hand, you're still playing a lot of the great football we saw last season. On the other hand, and I think we probably discussed it last time you came on the show, KC, there is just this real defensive resilience about Notts County, which we didn't see last season.
100%. We definitely have got the balance right this season. I mean, you can play your fluid football, you can make it look pretty, but at the end of the day, last season we were doing that and not really getting the results because we were so leaky, mate. It was almost like broken pipes at the back. But this season, it's just completely changed. We've kept that fluidity. We've got players that look better doing it as well. So you got your likes of George Abbott, for example. But then at the same time, we've also got a back line that you could just trust in now. I mean, you don't even obviously you've got Alex Bass, but you look in front of him, you've got Matty Platt, Jacob Beddoe, Rod McDonald. I mean, Platt and Beddoe were free transfers, and like I said on Saturday, they have absolutely no right to be that. I mean, both of them you could probably sell now for a lot more. I know obviously a lot more money. We got for free.
If only somebody had recommended Jacob Beddoe in the summer.
I know, yeah, I knew you was gonna. Yeah, I'll give you your flowers for that, mate. But no, honestly, this season I feel. Even with the fixtures we've got left, I don't fear any of them. I know we've got Port Vale away next week, and we've got Doncaster coming up at home, etc. But I don't fear any of them. I think it's as good a time as ever to get promoted out of this league. The quality is not exactly world beating, and I feel like we are one of the best teams in there, mate, because we've got that balance now.
Yeah, absolutely. One question I did want to ask you, Casey, was Rod McDonald, because if you speak to a Carlisle fan, they would say he's probably actually a decent defender at heading balls out of the box and doing the meat and potato stuff, but don't ask him to be any good on the ball, in terms of having the ball for long spells, and don't ask him to get himself in foot races, in wide areas. And the Notts County, playing right centre back in a back three for Notts County requires him to be good at both those things. So I suppose even off the back of good seasons at Crewe Alexandra and Harrogate Town, I'm kind of surprised at how he's become, sort of quite almost a regular starter for Notts County, and clearly settling into it well. So has that caught you out? Are you a little bit surprised at how well Rod McDonald has been doing?
100%. I mean, to be fair to Rod, like he has had some shaky games there, but when you're a left-footed centre half playing at right back, you're going to have some hiccup moments. I think again, obviously, we can't ever escape a full season without injuries, and where we've been hurt most is the right centre half. With obviously Lucas Ness, Lewis McCarry, both sustaining long-term injuries. But I mean, Rod's really, really fitted in quite well. I mean, like I said, he's had a few shaky games, but Saturday again, I refer back to Saturday a lot, and I probably will again further on in the time he speaks to me tonight. But Saturday, he barely put a foot wrong, and that's what you need as well. I mean, if there's anyone's place in this back three, that's probably a bit jeopardised. It is probably his, and with performances like that on Saturday, you'll probably say he's got it safe for a good few more games coming up. But like I said, mate, some games he's had some really, really shaky moments, some misplaced passes, and there's been a few growings towards him. But Saturday, I mean, a prime example of how brilliant he can be. So I can't have any complaints at the minute about any of the players, mate. That it actually feels quite nice to say that for a change. It really does.
Absolutely. Ed, what have you made of Notts County? Do you see them as the second best team in the league?
Oh God! Don't stop making me pick ranking teams based on their actual positions. I'll speak positively about them anyway because I do love it, and I just find them deadly. Just multiple sources of goals. We all know the qualities Jatta's got. Having him to the end of the season, sensational. We'll see what happens from there. It feels like my Traore is basically succession plan part 3. We went from Langstaff to Jatta. See what Traore comes down the line and what he can offer to this team. Jody Jones back fit, massive. Greg Abbott, absolutely love him in the middle of the park. David McGoldrick is just himself, just standard. Just know exactly what we're getting with there. I absolutely just love the makeup of this team. And I'm with KC, actually, where it's weird. The idea of Rod McDonald, a left-sided centre-back playing in a back three where your middle centre-back is right-footed, your two outsides are left-footed, feels quite odd, but it works. And it's kind of a bit of surprise by that. So I guess it's just maybe, I don't know, is there kind of two-footed comfort with Rod McDonald you get with from KC that you maybe don't get the same level with Bordeaux?
To be fair, it's a tricky one because, again, because in a few games this season, he hasn't looked, particularly comfortable. But then again, you could argue the same for Bedu. I mean, Bedu's had a tremendous season. He's probably up there for one of our players of the season. But at times, we do have them shaky moments, and a lot of it does get mopped up by Matty Black. So, I mean, I think both of them.
I would say, Casey, I think if we're talking about foot races, if I'm a wide forward, if I'm quick, which I'm not, but if I was quick and I was a wide forward, I wouldn't fancy my chances against Jacob Bordeaux because I think he's so quick and strong. Whereas against Rob McDonald, I would
ask: is it quick or is it just big strides?
Interesting, yeah.
Can be both answers, to be fair. I'm just wondering if that's the case because it feels like a good size back line as well, which is quite handy in there.
Yes,
it is. It definitely is, and I think with that, Gab, as well. I think McDonald's got the experience on his side, so he's not the quickest in the world. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like he's just got that the brain to read the game a little bit better. And there's not many times he does get caught out. To be fair, I'm not gonna. He might be the slowest in that back three, but I don't think he lacks pace. To be fair.
Okay, interesting. Anyway, do you think you're going to get top 3, Casey?
Oh. You got to back your team, haven't you? No.
That seems like the same line.
No, look, I'm confident. I think. Like I've touched on already in this, the league quality is, it's not fantastic. I mean, there's not many consistent teams. I mean, even now you're looking at Walsall, I think they're 3 games without a win as well. So I think top three you've got to be looking at. I mean, Stuart Maynard, you can tell me and tell everyone all he wants. Sorry, he's not looking at the table, but I'm telling you now, he's probably sat there rubbing his hands at the opportunity because it's a glorious chance. The squad that he's got. It's clearly one that he trusts now as well. It's more like last season, he took a lot of flack. Everyone wanted him to go, understandably so as well, because the results weren't there. But this season, I mean, it's just like a completely new man. He's got the whole team behind him and the fan base as well. That everyone's behind him as well. It feels like now as well. That's what you need when you come into the running, and that's what makes me confident that we'll be in the top 3 come the end of the season.
Well, let's hope that's the case. Casey, thanks so much for taking the time to join us. We'll let you get back to your work or your break, and look forward to catching up soon.
Thank you very much, mate. Take care, guys.
Cheers, mate. Delighted to be joined now by Lauren of Port Vale. Good evening, Lauren. Thanks for joining us. You've certainly shown some resilience in recent games, haven't you? 10 points from your last 4, and certainly haven't been knocked off your stride when you've had red cards.
No, I mean, it's not been ideal, let's say that, but I think the resilience and the grit that the team have shown throughout those games, I mean, especially last weekend when it was pretty much the majority of the game, we played with 10 men, We showed great grit and determination, which is always a positive. But I'd have much preferred to have all 11 on the team on the pitch rather than down to 10.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there a concern that that's a disciplinary issue for Darren Moore to perhaps address?
Well, it's funny you said that because I think the other week we were saying that disciplinary was in mid table, and then since that conversation that people have had, we've started to slip down slowly. I think Crowsdale's getting a yellow card. I think every match or every other match.
Bit of an occupational hazard, isn't it, Lauren?
Yeah, a slippery slope to go down, and especially with the injuries that we've got, we don't particularly want any more suspensions and things. But hopefully, it's something that Darren Moore can sort out quickly and nip in the bud because we can't risk losing some players.
Ed, what do you make of Port Vale? Are you confident that they're going to finish in the top 7, or do you think they can challenge some of the teams that we've spoken about so far this evening?
Certainly on the top 7 side, I'm feeling that way because if I'm truthfully seeing like the 7 currently there is the 7. That's quite easy to say because of where we're at with the table. But I like the look at it all the same. The goalkeeper situation intrigued me a little bit. Just wonder what the reaction was to Ripley going. I think we'd kind of got this idea Ben Ellis was maybe going to take his spot already. My understanding was Ripley had gone away for personal reasons and just never came back and just ultimately got that sale to Swindon. So I just kind of wonder what the initial perception was of that. And now the fact we've got Ben Amos and Nathan Broom as the backup.
I think it was strange at first. I think obviously Ripley has been our number 1 for last season and then all this season up to Grimsby. And then after Grimsby, he got dropped and we just thought, maybe just for the game. Then paternity leave happened and then next minute we know he's off to Swindon and that was kind of that. So it came to a shock to me personally. I know there's been mixed messages and mixed emotions from the fans with his departure and things, but I think at the end of the day, he has saved us more times than he hasn't over his spell at Vale. And that can't be denied and can't be contested because he has pulled us out of games. I'm thinking back to Bromley away this season. He pulled off some magnificent saves to keep it in 0-0. So, yeah, I think a bit of confusion from the fans. I'm a bit sad to see him leave, to be honest, because he has done so much for us. He has saved us quite a few times. Bit of a strange one, but Ben Amos has obviously took his space at the moment and he's proving to do all right. So, yeah, long may it continue.
Yeah, absolutely. Lofa, I've felt with Port Vale this season that you recruited to have 4 strikers at the beginning of the season, and then in the end Darren Moore went with a 3-4-3, and then more recently it's gone back to a two up top with Jamie Stockley and Laurent Talage. I'm sure Darren would argue that having the personnel to be that flexible and play different ways and adapt to circumstances is a massive strength, and it gives you loads of squad depth, which again, huge advantage at this level. There's also part of me that's kind of thinking I'm not really seeing an identity to Port Vale sometimes. I'm just wondering, is that something you'd like?
Isn't that Darren Moore thing, tinkering?
Yeah.
It's kind of thing we've seen with Moore.
Absolutely. I think there's been quite a few games, especially prior to Christmas, where you'd see 5-6 changes every game and there was no kind of solid and solidity side. I think since Doncaster, he has tried to keep kind of a similar sort of side, and he has gone with that front two of Tully and Stockley. But I think with that tinkering, what's helped massively is having Ben Garrity back in the team and having him available, because we went through a phase where we had not many midfielders. And we had Crowsdale kind of running midfield with Byers out and Garrity. So I think tinkering was there because we didn't know which midfielder to go with and what midfielder suited which game. But I think obviously now having Garrity back is so pivotal in our team and our game. I think that's kind of might shown more that we need to do that too up front with Garrity just behind.
I'd also say getting a proper left wing back in Jaheim Headley, I just like as an addition, because never really felt who had that left hand side. James Shorrock, nice to have a youngster in there, but I don't know if he's really of a level to be the main starter at the left wing back yet. And little bit surprised about Conor Grant getting released because I kind of thought he had maybe still a backup spot in the team, but for whatever reason, he's been moved on. So I guess have we finally got Mitchell Clark back, but I'm not sure we have. Didn't he pick up an injury last night? But...
Yeah, don't know. I think it looked like an extension of his knee.
Okay.
But he's just not had the greatest of times at the moment with injuries.
Just ask you quickly about Ryan Crosdale. So obviously, I think pretty much every team in League Two were after him in the summer. Sounds like he started off really, really well. There was a lot of praise for him. How's he been performing the rest of this season so far?
I think you could ask 99% of Vale fans, and they would tell you that he would be the player of the season if we called it now. He's Mr. Consistent. He just gets the job done, whether it's quietly or not. And I think when he came to us from Stockport, a lot of their fans were saying that he doesn't like to get up forward and he kind of like sits back. But more recently, we've been seeing Crosdale running into that box and making those ones to create, which has obviously been quite a pleasant surprise for us. But no, absolutely fantastic, and you can't fault him. I mean, maybe I'll fault the amount of yellow cards he's getting, but I mean, at the moment, he's doing a thankless job on the team.
Are you nearing a stage of giving up with George Byers? I hate to say it, but there was such a buzz. Okay, maybe giving up was the wrong word, but is there kind of maybe this acceptance that he's just not going to sadly have that fitness to properly light up the season before it's done? It just needs to be a consistent issue with him.
Yeah, and I think I'm still hopeful that the second half of the season is going to be his season, but if for whatever reason it's not going to be, I'm more than happy we've got Garrity, Crosdale, and Rakeem Harper in there. They'll do a good enough job, but obviously I think any Vale fan would love to see George Byers in the team, but at the same time, you don't want to risk him getting injured again and things. So I think it's just monitoring his minutes as much as we can, as much as we'd like him to be playing every minute.
Yeah, I'm hoping George Byers becomes a Port Vale legend. So you rename a stand after him, and you can just crop for the bicar stand. You can just cross out.
Yeah, let's not do
that. Bit of a bad joke there. So Lauren, do you think Port Vale are going to finish in the top 3? Do you think you've got what it takes to push automatic promotion, or do you feeling you might be more of a playoff side?
At the start of the season, I was definitely saying top 3. I think I'd love to say top 3 now, but it just depends on how consistent we can be for the second half of the season. I mean, we had a shaky start, went on a really consistent run, then went back being shaky. So I think the next couple of games, especially Notts County at home next week, and even Swindon this weekend, real tests for us, and we can see from there. But yeah, I think top 3 would be amazing, but definitely top 7.
Brilliant stuff. Well, look forward to seeing how things go. Thanks so much for joining us, Lauren, and best of luck for the rest of the season.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. See you later.
Cheers. Well, from one side of the A500 to another, now joined by Tom Boon of Crewe Alexandra. Tom, thanks so much.
PSV, by the looks of
it. Thanks so much for joining us, Tom. What are you making of Crewe's promotion chances after that 1-1 draw at Harrogate last time out?
I think it's taken a bit of a bump, hasn't it? The last sort of few weeks. I think January's sort of been, it's been building on sort of these brilliant bits of individual moments and sort of allowing ourselves and our structure to keep us in games rather than convincingly winning games. And I think if you had have asked me after the Bromley game, I would have been unbelievably confident of us sort of really staying in that top 3 battle. And sort of now by the end of the month, a few games later, not to be too reactionary, it does sort of feel like we're almost heading towards how we were last season in hanging on to the playoffs and sort of looking behind us rather than ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that because I watched the highlights of the Harrogate game, and one thing that kind of stood out to me is even though you've got some brilliant defenders, like I think you could go to any of the back 5, Zach Williams, left wing back, having a really solid season. Max Conway, of course, right wing back, even though he's normally played on the left. Mickey Demetrio, of course, Jamie Knight-Labelle. I'm also feeling like, despite having brilliant individual defenders, I don't really think that you've got that kind of super destructive midfielder that's really breaking up play and is really sort of switched on defensively. So I'm almost surprised. Maybe I'm wrong in that assertion, but yeah, I'm sort of surprised that with that, despite that, you still have this brilliant defensive record, which I suppose is testament to the goalkeeper and the defence.
I think, yeah, I mean, you raise a good point, and I think if he was fit and available, it probably is Connor Thomas who does that exact role you just described, isn't it? And I think his fitness record has obviously been a bit of a, an unfortunate circumstance for us at pretty much his entire time with us. And I think, yeah, we sort of rely on the way in which we structure ourselves. And I think it's the opposite of last season. I think last season we started games quite poorly, but had this ability in us to come back and had this ability in us to fight back. Whereas this season, it's sort of the opposite in that we're really, really smart at the start of games. We're really structured, really organised, and we approach games in a good way from the start and from the off. But we seem to switch off a little bit more later on in games, which has sort of been the polar opposite, and sort of the tactical tweakings of Ryan Dicker and Lee Bell have sort of been, I don't want to say our downfall, but, there are certain games this season where they have been to our detriment. Whereas last season, it was the sort of total opposite. And I think sort of the back end of last season and the form we were in, I think Lee Bell, especially with then the 5-0 dismantling by Chesterfield, I think has sort of, I don't want to say gotten scared, but I think has really gone defence first in his approach. And I think we base our games on trying to stay in games and trying to keep a clean sheet, knowing that we will have a goal in us at some point to try and get free or, 1 point.
Tom, I'm getting a little bit worried about Max Conway, as in his position within the team. I think you've got too many centre-backs, as in too many who want to play. Because I look at it and you've got, Mickey Dimitriou's in there, but you've got Jamie Knight-Lavelle, who I like, Conor O'Riordan, who I like, James Conley, who I like, Zach Williams, I still think more as like a left centre-back than a left wing-back.
Agreed.
And then you want to get Cooney and Conway as your two wing-backs, but you can't play like a back seven. So... And it feels like Conway's one that's being shitted out of his. I want him at the left wing back spot because I think he's been great there. And it feels like he's sometimes having a slot in the midfield or out on the right. And I kind of want him as the main left wing back instead of Williams.
I think you're spot on in that. And it was sort of something a few of us Crewe fans were saying that the re-signing of Conor O'Riordan is brilliant. He's a brilliant player. Yeah. But it was sort of James Connolly's been injured and we know he's going to be out for an extended period of time. And so bringing him in from that point of view made sense. But in one way, it's already denied the pathway of Lewis Billington, who, would have been a perfectly fine backup centre-half, has filled in brilliantly when he's been available. But also, how many teams at this level have 6, centre-halves that you would probably define as one of the better ones in the division? And I think, yes, we've brought Conor O'Riordan back in, and I think it is equally as sentiment as it is improving the team.
Is that similar with Lowry?
I think it's the same with Lowry. Yeah, I think Lowry possibly was a bit more needed, a bit more creativity, but I think it's played us into problems because you can't drop Mickey Dimitriou because he's the captain and, in my opinion, the best centre half in the division. Zach Williams is one of our own and is the vice captain, so he's virtually indroppable in that sense.
Vice captain now, really. Zach Williams, like 20. Right.
I know it's the Crewe way, though, isn't it, Gab? It's the Crewe way. So it sort of feels like we have these sort of 3 or 4 undroppable centre halves, and Lee Bell isn't making a decision to drop one of them, and instead is shoehorning Zach Williams out of position. As a result, Max Conway's out of position, and so it sort of does feel like we have so many good defenders, but it could lead to being a problem for us. And I think you're spot on to sort of point that out, Ed.
And the other thing for me as well is, I don't know, I'm just not lit up by this front line. I was enjoying Jack Lancaster before that injury, but it kind of felt like Lancaster was the one who was almost carrying you in terms of finding those individual moments to win games. We always have the same discussion with Chris Long. Lovely ability, but you just can't trust him for fitness, sadly. And I think Hemmings has struggled likewise. And I've never really warmed to the idea of Shiloh Tracy as a striker. To me, he's kind of a loose forward. You'd have just encouraged to use that pace and pull maybe wider. So it's weird. I find Crewe a little bit puzzling because I just think they've got too many personnel at the bottom end, which is affecting their midfield, and then the front line is just lacking that real spark, I think, compared to some of the other teams in this top 7 race.
I think the front line really confuses me because we've in most games this season scored a goal, but in very little we've scored more than one. So we clearly have the potential to create chances and get goals, but we yet don't seem to blow teams away. And I think you're right to point that out as a bit of a concern. I don't think it's the attackers. I actually think it's the creativity of this team. I think we look devoid of that sort of creative spark that will create a chance out of nothing or bag a goal out of nothing. And that was Jack Lancaster until he's injured. Unfortunately, it looks like there's potential that Omar, Chris and Shiloh could be injured now as well, which would be a real detriment. And obviously using up all our...
Is it Adrian Tebow again now? Is that what we've got called?
I think it would likely be Tebow and then the possibility of recalling Finn Roberts, possibly playing Holacek up top, which did work away at Grimsby away. But it worked at Grimsby away, but it's obviously not a long-term solution, is it? So it does sort of feel like we're waiting as fans on the extent of these knocks or injuries and sort of really hoping they're not too serious, because that could be what derails us. I think, yeah, it's interesting in that I still think we've struggled to replace the Elliot Nevitt type of striker. I feel like we recruited the Courtney Baker-Richardson striker twice, and I know that's something Gab touched on before the season. I think Omar Bogles and Kane Hemmings, both being available on the market, are both sort of respectable strikers at this level, but you do sort of lack that pressing intensity that sort of did tire out opposition defenders and allow us to create more chances late in games. And I feel like Longy and Shiloh have tried doing that sort of similar role, but to not quite the same level that we saw from Elliot Nevitt last season.
Yeah, it feels like there's lots of good strikers or decent strikers at Crewe, but would you sacrifice two of them to have a real killer centre forward that could be a game changer? I think that would be the question. One thing I really wanted to ask you about, Tom, was that kind of midfield balance, because I look at the highlights of the Harrogate game where I think Joel Taberner possibly lost his man for the opener from a corner. I thought Maciej Holacek was clumsy from a free kick. I sort of look at Max Sanders and, would a really destructive midfielder have kind of closed down the odd, one or two shots from outside the box. And I'm just wondering, it feels a little bit loose in midfield and almost like there's maybe a complacency in the midfield because of how good defensively the back five are. And I'm wondering, could that become a problem where actually you need someone that's a bit more switched on defensively in midfield and is... I don't know. Is the balance a little bit off kilter by having... Is that
again going back to the Connor Thomas discussion?
Yeah, possibly.
I think, the midfield's definitely been the biggest sort of criticism this season from Crewe fans, in that it does seem that quite often they go anonymous. Quite often we feel he doesn't set up his midfield in the way that other teams around us are doing. And I think, like you said, we are almost missing that leader and enforcer. And I don't want to put too much emphasis on Connor Thomas, because I've been guilty of doing that in the past. And actually, our record without him is completely fine. It's very respectable, actually. But I do feel like he is someone that when you watch just conveys that bit more aggression, that bit more calmness that you do want in a midfield. I think Taberner is developing at a rate that we possibly aren't wanting. He's sort of... Since breaking through in the team, I really thought he'd kick on and be the next big thing at Crewe, and it sort of feels like Holacek's already overtaken him. It feels like Taberner, I do think, has become a bit of a scapegoat for fans this season. I don't think he's been as bad as some people have made out, but I do think there are very fair concerns over the midfield and the creativity of the midfield. I don't actually think it's the defensive aspect that we're lacking. I do think it is that getting forward creativity aspect. I feel like, Holacek aside, the assists and goals from our midfield are sort of nowhere near the levels they were last season, and sort of Jack Powell never fully getting back to fitness just yet has been a big cause of that as well.
Interesting. So where was I? Yeah, so creating more creativity in goals would certainly help. With that in mind, because obviously the transfer window's closed, so anything you bring in now is going to be free agents. But do you think that top 7 is looking more likely for Crewe than top 3?
I feel like the thing is with us is I don't know, because at this level I think this is the most even the league has been in quite a few years. I don't think there's any teams that particularly excel. I think there's the case that sort of Walsall, Notts County and Doncaster are beginning to pull away and beginning to look like the best 3. But I think anyone can beat anyone in this league on the day, and I don't think there's that much of a gulf in quality. I don't think there's a Wrexham or a Mansfield or a Stockport. I don't think there's even the Richie Wellens, Leyton Orient side. I don't think there's quite that gap in this league, and I think it means that our strengths of keeping in games and being really defensively solid mean that we actually do well against the odds, which is, I think, very reminiscent of Lee Bell. I think that sums him up as a manager. I think when we're against the odds, when we're under the cosh, when you bet against us if you were sensible, that's when we thrive. And I think there was a point, I don't know if it's the current top 7 because it does keep changing, but there was a point where we were unbeaten against the top 7. And pretty much all of our defeats have come from teams below us. I think it might even be all of our defeats have come from teams below us. So we are very much capable of staying in games and surprising these big boys. It's just about scoring more goals, and it's about, turning draws into wins. If we turned 3 or 4 draws into wins, we were suddenly where Walsall are. And it's about that. It's about creating more chances more regularly, because we do have the quality defensively to stay in games in this division. So I think it probably will be top 7 that we'll be looking at. I mean, as we know in this league, a drop of form and you're suddenly 9th or 10th. It's a crazy League 2 is, but a sudden turn in form the other way and you're in the top 3 again. So I think it will be the top 7 that we're aiming for. I could see us sneaking, going along steadily, converting a few of these draws into wins, and you never know.
You never know. Brilliant stuff. Well, thanks for joining us, Tom, and all best for the rest of the season.
No worries. It's been a pleasure, Gab.
Cheers. So, Chris, I wanted to come to you on Bradford City, an automatic promotion contender we've not mentioned yet. I've done a massive U-turn on Bradford City in the last month or so, as you know, just because of the impact of Alex Patterson and Anthony Sarcevic since coming in, and the energy that's come and the sort of legs that have come into the team.
Yeah, I think, what was it, a month ago since I came on here, and I said, I feel there's something different. I feel like there's something different in the air. The way that we're starting to play football, we're keeping it down on the floor, Gab, which is, absolutely huge. But what we're doing is
Is the pitch letting you do that at Valley Parade this season? Because it's been a state and fast.
Believe it or not, the pitch is actually okay this season. It's not it's not Albert Bartlett's field this season. But yeah, we're bullying teams. We're really bullying teams. As we mentioned earlier on about the Walsall performance, I don't think anyone could believe what we were seeing. It was just something else, and something just feels a little bit different this season. Obviously we've just had quite a lot of guests on, and I'm listening to them. I'm kind of like a little bit like, eek, maybe this is going to be quite difficult. But I just feel that something's a little bit different. I feel though, however, the one thing that we may have missed out on, and I think a lot of City fans have mentioned this, is we probably should have brought another forward in. I think that, we've got
even with Callum Kavanagh in form and Michael Mellon coming in, having scored, having had a brilliant record at Morecambe a year ago.
Yeah, I definitely do. I think we need to have, we certainly need more options there. Obviously, Dane Oliver has gone to Shrewsbury. Tyler Smith, has gone to Barrow. I feel that we need that competition up there, and I do feel that is potentially going to be an issue. The problem
you really play with one up top, so having 2 strikers is absolutely fine, I think.
I feel like we still need that pressure. The problem with Callum Kavanagh at times is, and he does get quite a lot of abuse for it, to be honest, which I think is pretty unfair to the lad, is he does have those odd games where it's just not happening for him at all. Wimbledon was a perfect example of that. And it also feels a little bit like he sulks. And when he starts to sulk, he's going to have a stinker. On Saturday, for instance, Sarcevic was having a go at him quite a few times, really. And he came off at probably about the 60-minute mark. And then Michael Mellon came on, showed some glimpses, but I just feel that we need to have that pressure. If we're really serious about going up, we need to have. This is where I'm
confused, Chris, because in my head, Mellon was supposed to fill the void to a certain degree left by Cook. I thought Mellon was going to be that main centre forward, and I think he's played 34 minutes off the bench at the minute. So is this a selection thing that's not getting picked, or is it something fitness related?
No. It's literally just because of how well we've been playing, and it's we've pretty much just kept the same team. I think we're just starting to tinker around a little bit. For instance, we massively missed Bobby Poynton on Saturday against Wimbledon. We missed his pace, we missed his his flair. But I think that for Michael, he must be quite frustrated currently because he's not really had that time yet. I don't doubt for a second that he will get that time and that he will be in that team. I mean, to be honest with you, I think that might come as soon as Saturday. But I think that, how do you replace Andy Cook? Do you know what I mean? You can't replace Andy Cook, and I think they're both.
No, but you can get a guy in Michael Mellon who was wonderful at Morecambe this time
totally.
In the third stage of last season. This is where I had in my mind. Okay, you lose Cook, fine, but we'll see Mellon kind of substituting there, not as something of a different kind of threat, but a goal scoring threat all the same. And as we've seen, Patterson, Sarcevic really showing themselves as threats from midfield. It all felt fine. I'm just a little bit confused why I'm still seeing Kavanagh be the main starter ahead of him. I expected Mellon to be in that first 11 by now.
Yeah, and I think that we all did. I will be honest. I think I thought that he would have been, he would have had a lot more minutes than he is. I think again, though, I repeat what I said a little bit earlier on, is that Kavanagh has been in really good form. He has played really well. The thing with Kavanagh is he does come up,
and yet you're still all divisive on him. It's odd.
He's one of these. He's quite. He's a frustrating player, but he's someone that I do rate. I think at the beginning of the season, I did say he was the one to watch. I did feel that he was going to really step on. I was talking to a Borough fan the other day about him, actually, and he was asking how he was getting on, and they genuinely believed that he was going to be the next big thing. They really thought that, that's how much they thought of Kavanagh. I just feel that he's slightly inconsistent. And it's a great thing to have. It's absolutely brilliant position to be in, that we have got all these players that are desperate to play for us at the moment and literally just cannot get in the team because of how well we're playing. I mean, Wimbledon, even on Saturday, I don't think it's unfair to say that we could have scored 2 or 3 goals in that game, and that's kind of the football we're playing. There was no panicking after Saturday. It was more of a case of, okay, these happens. We'll move on, and we'll look after. We'll get ready for Harrogate on Saturday. We got a win against Rotherham last night. Again, Jamie Walker, who has been out of the squad, for the last 3 or 4 weeks, comes in, man of the match. It's a great.
Really, I'm really surprised Jamie Walker's going to fit into the Bradford City team, because I would have guessed you want your Bobby Poyntons, your Alex Pattersons, your Anthony Sarcevic being super aggressive against the ball, and Walker's just an enigmatic technician who isn't really going to fit into it. So for him to be man of the match kind of surprised me.
It's a trophy game though, Gab. It is different.
Oh yeah, true.
But I think that's what Jamie shows. I don't think that we were trying to get rid of Jamie in January. I thought, I think we do still want him, and he does offer that slightly different, as you said, Gav. He does offer that to us. But it's a great situation to have where we're getting a player who's not even been in the squad for the last month, and he's getting man of the match. This is the thing. I'll be honest when I say this as well, and it probably sounds like I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but the team spirit at the moment is phenomenal, and it's something that I haven't seen since Parkinson's been here. I think Graham Alexander has really instilled what it means to be a Bradford City player, what it means to play for the club, and it's really exciting to see, all the options that we've got. I mean, like Keller, for instance, I think he's probably played 20 minutes. He's been at the club for probably 6 weeks now. We've just brought in 3 players on transfer deadline day. We've finally brought in a goalkeeper to put some pressure on Walker. We brought back Romany Critchlow, who was a bit of a cult hero at Bradford and had a good game yesterday. So it's kind of, it just feels like this squad is starting to get a lot of quality together. We just need to make sure that we're getting the best out of Alex Patterson, because it does worry me when he's not quite at it. And I think that's really unfair, because actually he's been phenomenal. He's just been, nominated for Player of the Month, and he has made the difference, I'd say, more than Sarcevic has. But I also think it's, what we also forget about as well is Smallwood's contribution into this team and how well he is, behind the scenes. Wimbledon, he probably didn't have his greatest game. We didn't win. I think he's key. I think he's really, really key in this team. And it's, it's those elements that are coming together. we'll let Patterson go score from 40 yards out on a run, and run through the defence, and those kind of goals. But Smallwood is genuinely absolutely brilliant at the moment, and for me, it's absolutely why we're playing as well as we are.
Yeah, I think because there's such a direct correlation between Alex Patterson's return, along with Sarcevic, and this brilliant form that we've seen from Bradford City, we have to consider Alex Patterson as among Bradford City's most important players, which is great in one way because you've got somebody who's made this enormous impact. In another way, I'm a little bit apprehensive that this is a player that has had injuries in the last 3 or 4. He probably would be playing higher by now if it wasn't for some of the injuries he's had in his career. So I'm almost a little bit apprehensive that are you relying on him to a greater extent than would be optimal for somebody in his position?
I think we are trying to look after him. I can't remember who the last home game was against. Who was it? I was there.
Was it Walsall?
No, it was one after Morecambe. Yes, Morecambe. Of course, it was. We rested him against Morecambe, and I think that's we're not having to play him every single game. It'd be great to have him in every single game, but we are trying to look after him. And you're absolutely right. He's been out for 18 months of the last 2 years. Had some horrific injuries, and it's been very frustrating. 3 months ago, I'd have said I wouldn't give him a contract. Obviously, now he could probably ask what he wants, but there's always that fear factor, of course, with him. But it does sound like we are really looking after him. We are wrapping him up in cotton wool, which is exactly what we have to do with him. He's going to be so pivotal towards for this last third of the season. And if we can keep him fit, he just seems to be getting
on that. I have a follow-up question.
Sure.
Around the depth in that case, if we're worried about this dependence on Patterson, is it a possibility we look at this and say that lapsing Lee was a bit of a waste of time? That they are kind of backups? Because in my eyes, those two could take up the kind of role that we see from Patterson, maybe a bit more advanced than he was necessarily, not necessarily just alongside
back deeper end.
Exactly like that. Because I've been looking at those two and saying, if we want to prove there's no reliance on Patterson, let's get one of those. Tommy Lee, I'm confused about Tommy Lee because I thought he was going to be a top League One player for a while at Accrington. And there was links to Portsmouth and him being the top end League One. Not found that place at MK Dons, and now we're looking at him here. He's a guy who can play just up the attacking spine of the team. Could be your third choice striker the way it's going at the minute. He can fit in there. So I'm just wondering, are we going to see? Do you think we're going to see enough of those in the second half of the season to prove their worth?
Tommy's started the last two. And it looks like, even though I've been whinging about kind of forwards, he has kind of been playing as kind of like that target man a lot of the times. I actually quite like him. I think what we have to realise with Tommy is that he's not played a lot of football either. Same with Lapsley as well. Really hasn't really played that much football. Tommy needs to get up to speed. I don't think a Tommy Lee is a target man forward, Gab. I mean, I think of him as an auxiliary striker. I think he's best as an attacking midfielder, as a kind of just late runner into the box where you want him. Yes, he could fill in a striker, but I would say that's an absolute last resort. The idea of playing him like a target man, making him a focal point.
Accrington Stanley had to play him as a striker.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he didn't have any strikers, but that doesn't mean that he was like that was optimal. So but I've always felt Tommy Lee and George Lapsley quite similar players because they're just really disruptive tens, very energetic, and I quite like that under David Sharp there seems to be a continuity in the sense of what Bradford City are looking for. I don't think that was the case under the sort of previous kind of recruitment setup, if you like. Whereas now I've got a lot more confidence that Bradford City know what they want, and if you're a club that knows what you want, you can probably go and get it.
I think what's really important on that as well is on David Sharp and kind of like the contribution he's made to the club. Graham Alexander said the other day, it might have been yesterday, where he said, we were looking for another forward before transfer deadline day. However, we're not just going to go sign anybody. Gone are the days when we would be signing a Curtis Guthrie. Do you know? And it's kind of like, it's really good to see. And it's, there's been a lot of releases on transfer deadline day. There are a few strikers out there potentially for us to bring in if we need to do so. But what's also nice is that there is also a little bit more in the budget there, that if we do need to go into the free transfer market, then we can bring those players in. I just feel that Yeah, David Sharp, with what he's done so far, he's impressed a lot of people, and he just seems to have that knack and that ability that we haven't had for a long time. And I think it's fair to say, even before current regime, I think
even though we're looking at what could be a second playoff finish in 2 years or 3 years? When was the
3 years?
The Mark Hughes? 3 years.
22,
you're feeling a lot better about this team going into the idea of a playoff campaign than you would the last team, even though we looked at that and thought lightning form, Andy Cook, Scott Banks, influential as well. We like to look at those two individuals. But I'm kind of with you. I think I like this team more to go into a playoff campaign necessarily than what we just had a couple of years back.
Yeah, I completely agree. I feel that, like, as I say, there just seems to be something different. Entertaining. Bradford City are actually entertaining to watch as a football team at the moment. This is not something I've said for a long time either.
You got 2 Wembley trips this season, Chris, believe.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we don't have that second Wembley trip. Hopefully, we can get into that automatic spots. But yeah, I'm really positive. And usually, it's bloody depression being a Bradford City fan. It really is. But something's changing. And actually,
well, if you want to prove it, you've got your rivals at the weekend in Harrogate, or your rivals with the question marks. If you're serious, you beat them, because I know Harrogate tend to be a bogey side.
They always beat us. I think is it one time we've beaten them in the last 8?
So, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. So, yeah, we've got that's got to be important. It's got to be important that we put a performance on, and I'd like to think that we can put a real performance on them. There are goals in this team. Finally, though, we can say that other players are starting to score goals. That's something we haven't seen for a long time. It's always been Andy Cook. I feel that now those different players are starting to come through and are scoring goals, and I just think we're going to get better. I say, honestly, I feel that there's something else there. I'm sure those are going to be famous last words, but I just feel that we're going to get that little bit better.
Guys, I know I've kept you for a long time this evening, so I really do appreciate your commitment to us. If we can just keep you for an extra 10 minutes, just to round things off, because I wanted to ask you, Ed, about AFC Wimbledon.
I had a thing they were coming.
Yeah, we haven't been able to get hold of it on the show tonight, but I did want to talk about them because that defensive consistency, like Isaac Ogundere and Joe Lewis at the back, have really stood out to me.
Yeah, super impressed, because I'm not certain they've got their full strength of defence at the minute. It's a bit weird. I have this very clear idea that Joe Lewis and Ryan Johnson are part of it, but that additional third centre back has rotated a bit. We've seen James Ball substituting to there. We've seen Sam Hutchinson substituting to there, and Isaac Ogundere is playing there now. And in theory, on paper, it should be Ogundere because he's the actual centre back, and a lot of the other two have kind of been midfielders who've shown a bit of
brings the
defensive
recovery pace and strength, doesn't he?
Exactly with that. So I'm keen to see how that goes, and what does that necessarily mean for Hutchinson, who I quite like has come in as an impact as a free signing, and what does it mean to Ball when he comes back? Whether he loses his place, so be it. Alistair Smith runs that midfield. He is fantastic, and they're extremely important to them. Their wing backs are wingers at heart, and I like that because they're attacking. That's exactly what I want, because that security to get behind, with the fact you've got Reeves and Smith as your midfield pair, I think just works quite nicely for that.
Ed, I tell you what, Ed, Jake Reeves coming back is a massive thing for AFC Wimbledon, because
he's just an upgraded Callum Maycock. I like Maycock, but he's not Jake Reeves.
Well, he's just not the same type of player, and I think with Jake, what you get with Jake Reeves, and he did this for Stevenage as well, because he looks after the ball so well. He offers something different. He allows them to control games in different ways. So you've got this really industrious, close-knit team, but Jake Reeves offers that little bit of assurance and class, and the way that he uses the ball, and his quality deliveries is brilliant as well. I think he's the one that really could be the difference.
And then you get into the front men. Matt Stevens, what a pit bull of a striker he is. That's the best description of him. We've got that really brilliant stocky build to him. Bagil back, great focal point, really handy. I'd love those two as a pair, but the fact Josh Kelly's come into there to play a little impact, who's taken a little while to get going since coming off a league from Solihull Moors, and now looks quite good in there. I'm still quite keen to see what Marcus Brown could do, because we're looking to someone to kind of fill that void left by Romain Sawyers, who had a great impact in the first start of the year. Brown should be that. Should
I
be.
think so. I think they're going to be at their best when they've got Marcus Brown in the number 10, then Omar Boudjil, who I absolutely love, alongside either Matty Stevens, who's probably would be him given his incredible form this season, or maybe a Josh Kelly if Stevens is unavailable. But I think that dynamic of the three, where you've got the creativity of Brown, the physicality, but also a little bit of creativity with Omar Boudjil and how selfless he is, and then the poacher who's constantly running onto things and hassling and harrying. I think that three is the one. I think when you put three strikers up there, I think it feels a little bit imbalanced. Whereas when you've got Marcus Brown behind two, I think the balance and the sort of equilibrium.
But I think there's also a chance to mix it up and put extra man in midfield, maybe get James Ball back in there or stick Maycock in there, maybe see a little bit of Miles Hippolyte if he comes to feature anymore.
Yeah,
and if you had a two of Begiel and Stevens, I'd still think that's a great.
I'm still quite sweet on Reeves and Smith. I think that's
I agree.
I think that's a quality midfield pairing. So yeah, AFC Wimbledon very. Do you know, I'm probably going a bit high. I did have AFC Wimbledon pegged as a similar level to Crewe a few weeks ago, but they've actually gone up in my estimations recently, and I'm now seeing them.
There's a clear source of goals with Wimbledon. If you look at them before the game, you say Stevens will score, Begier will probably score. You might find Tilly getting in the goals, or even Noisville getting in. The issue is, I think we've had with Crewe, even talking to Tom, was kind of like, we don't really get how they've got the goals they've got this season. It's the sense I'm really getting, because it feels like they're chopping and changing constantly with that front line, and someone's just pulling out a moment, and it doesn't feel as convincing as, quite frankly, to be honest, any of the other ones in the top 7 at the minute.
Yeah, I'm thinking if for the teams, the 4 teams below the top 7, I think Crewe would probably be the ones where you would look at and think we could maybe catch them. But in terms of AFC Wimbledon, just to finish off on them, Chris, what did you make of them on side? Were you able to watch the game in some form? If so, what did you make of the Dons?
Very, very, very organised. One thing that we've been doing really, really well at the moment is cutting teams open. Certainly, at the back, I felt that they understood after probably about 40, probably a second half really, what their task was to do and how to kind of eliminate any kind of process and attacking going forwards. And that's certainly something I haven't seen for a while. Patterson probably had his poorer game since he's come back, but we were just talking about Jake Reeves, for instance, and I just absolutely love the man as well. And it's such a shame that his run at Bradford ended like it did. He was out for 2 years with an injury. I mean, that's crazy amount of time for 2 years.
You just think what he could have done if he'd not had those 2 years out.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think I'm really glad for him that he's doing it at Wimbledon again, and it seems to be his spiritual home. And I really, really just. Yeah, I just phenomenal. He's just such a good footballer. He scored. He helped the assist. He just looks. I mean, it's the crazy thing with him is he's so small, but he's so powerful. He just looks like there's nothing about him, but he's such an enigmatic player that he reads the game so well. He can see those passes going, where he needs to put the ball and. And I think it is part of, the reason why Wimbledon are doing so well. I genuinely think Wimbledon finish in the top 3.
Interesting.
It's a games in hand factor that intrigues me a little bit, because they do have that on the teams around. And we say with games in hand, you kind of care about it more at the top end rather than the bottom end, because it feels like they can make use of it. So it always kind of feels like Wimbledon, I think if they'd gone properly right with the able to play all the fixtures over Christmas, would probably still be sat in the top 3 now. And they're just, the whole top 7's right on the edge of automatic, so I can't say too much about it. But the fact that they've still got those extras, it does feel like maybe when everyone's back on level games again, we might see a little bit of a gap between that 3 and the 4 below potentially. I'm wondering about
but that could also be a hindrance as well, couldn't it? The fact that they do have
just
those.
Depends when they're scheduled, Chris. If they, I agree, if they're like consecutive weeks, there's still enough months to spread it out. So I can't remember exactly when the rearranged games are thought, but if they're condensed out, there's a chance they could just treat them as extra midweeks and just go as standard weekend approach.
Chris, to sort of move it on to the back to the picture as a whole, just to round off, if AFC Wimbledon do get top 3, is it at the expense of Doncaster or Notts County? Will be the question.
He wants to say Walsall.
I don't know. It's the genuine answer to that.
Dad was trying to get me to predict things all season, Chris, and I'm still refusing to do it because I said League 2 was going to be like this. I'm not doing it.
Oh, he's like getting blood out of a stone.
Listen, I just think, I just don't know. I don't know if we can do that. Listen, we've got an exciting, finish to the season. I still haven't ruled us out as well for automatic.
Agreed.
And I think that's important as well. But I think we're in for a real race here, guys. And I think that there is going to be a lot of excitement towards the end of the season. And regarding Walsall, whether that they get trapped in it as well, I'm not going to say they are. But I mean, how exciting is this going to be? I mean, League 2 again, he's doing it.
One final question to you, Gab. Actually,
Go for it.
MK Dons. Have you lost hope? Because that group can't miss out on top 7. I don't want to be Lindsay if they miss out. He really has built an incredible group of players together.
Where am I with them? I think there's, on paper, they've got a top 3 squad.
Definitely.
They've got a sort of an embarrassment of riches. And it's just about whether it clicks, because there seems to be a bit of a mental block at MK Dons the last few years where whatever's there on paper, they've not quite been able to sort of translate it. I mean, if we say that Crewe, I think we've sort of reached a consensus that, of the current top 7 who are looking pretty strong, Crewe would be the likeliest to drop out. So then that would mean that if we take that, MK Dons are 10 points off Crewe with a game in hand. If they won that, it's 7 points, and I mean they could put a run together, but also it is a big gap, and I'm not sure I see Salford or Grimsby quite finding the consistency required to come in there. So it is down to Chesterfield and MK Dons, and I'm just not seeing enough form from those. I'm thinking the top 7 might stay as it is for now, but with some flexibility, because I do see a world where Crewe could drop out, but they have got that rock solid.
Are you wrong in counting Salford out of this?
I don't think Salford are good enough for the top 7, no. Why, would you disagree with that?
No, I think you're right. I think you're right. I think you're spot
on.
When
I went and watched them beat Accrington and MK Dons during the Christmas period, I did look at them and think there's a decent side in there. It's got a very clear style, a very good kind of asymmetric shape that's very clear both in and out of possession. I don't know. I kind of wonder a little bit about it. A little bit. I don't think the midfield makeup's quite to the level it wanted to. But the individuals in there, we're seeing some form with Stockton. Having Negru back at the end of the season is handy for them. They mixed around with the goalkeepers again. I kind of believe they could stay on the periphery because I've just seen the last couple of games. Yes, they blew that lead to Walsall, but also there was a fight back against Bromley, for instance, where they can show that character to get themselves back level again. So I've seen a level in those 2 winter games where I think they could still disrupt that race again before the season's done.
Interesting.
It's an intriguing one to me.
Well, there we go. Well, that just about wraps it up. Guys, a bit of a longer one than usual, so thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Don't take it for granted. Thanks to all our guests this evening. Thanks to you for watching at home. This has been the EFL Debate League 2 podcast. Get subscribed to EFL Debate if you've enjoyed this one on YouTube and on Spotify, because that would help us out an awful lot. And we'll see you again next week.